The morning started like any other across the galaxy. Council members were settling into their daily routines, checking reports, monitoring trade, and preparing messages to allies. For decades, humans had been seen as unpredictable, sometimes irritating, but ultimately useful members of the galactic community. Their technology was impressive, their creativity unmatched, and their diplomacy had grown over the years into a reliable, if occasionally stubborn, presence. Yet no one could have predicted what was about to happen at exactly the same moment across multiple council stations. Communications with Earth went silent. Not just delayed or faint, but completely silent. Every message, every envoy, every scheduled transmission stopped dead in its tracks. At first, it was assumed to be a technical failure, a rare glitch in the vast network connecting human worlds to the rest of the galaxy. Engineers were called in, systems were checked, and messages were sent, but nothing worked. Earth was gone from the galactic network. Panic began to ripple through the council chambers. Members gathered quickly, abandoning routine meetings to deal with this sudden and unprecedented silence. Conversations that had started calmly turned frantic within minutes. Some species, known for their cautious and analytical nature, tried to reason it out. Maybe it was a natural disaster. Maybe a system-wide failure had hit human networks simultaneously. But the truth slowly became clear. There was no error, no accident. The silence was intentional. Rumors spread faster than verified facts. Some council members whispered about rebellion or punishment. Perhaps humans had decided that the council's centuries of oversight, subtle dismissals, and sometimes outright betrayals had gone too far. Others imagined a far darker scenario. Maybe humanity had discovered something threatening, some hidden truth, and had cut off all communication to protect themselves or to prepare for something bigger. A small faction of council members, those who had always underestimated humans, dismissed the panic as unnecessary. They are still learning, one representative said, a tone of arrogance dripping from the words. Humans act rashly, yes, but they do not abandon diplomacy entirely. This will pass. But even these voices were drowned out by the mounting fear. History had shown that when humans acted, they often acted in ways no one expected, and ignoring that could be disastrous. Meanwhile, the automated systems that monitored galactic communication reported something that caused a new wave of concern. Every attempt to contact Earth bounced back with the same simple, firm message. Humanity has suspended external communication. Do not approach soul space. There was no explanation, no hint of reason, only the cold, absolute instruction. Council leaders stared at the screens, some turning pale in the face of a crisis they could not understand. The council quickly convened an emergency session, gathering representatives from hundreds of species. They debated the situation with urgency, yet without progress. How could one species confined to a single solar system hold so much power over the entire galactic network simply by disappearing? Traders worried about lost shipments. Scientists worried about halted collaboration. Diplomats feared that negotiations already in progress would collapse completely. As the debate raged, it became clear that the usual tools of persuasion and negotiation would not work here. Humans were not responding to pleas, to envoys, to messages sent by trusted allies. The silence was absolute. For the first time, the Council realized that humans did not need them as much as they had assumed. Overconfidence and past dismissals had blinded other species to a simple truth. Humans were capable of making independent decisions without outside approval. The panic grew when scouts sent to Sol reported that humans had established dense security around their planets and orbital stations. No intrusions, no unauthorized approaches, nothing. Every drone sent to investigate was neutralized, sometimes gently pushed back, sometimes disabled entirely. But there was no attack, no aggression, Humanity was simply refusing to engage. The calm, calculated silence terrified the council more than any attack could have. Within the council chambers, whispers began about what this could mean. Some feared a military buildup, imagining human fleets hidden in deep space, preparing for conflict. Others considered economic retaliation, imagining Earth cutting off access to resources, technologies, and trade. There were even those who wondered if humanity was planning to leave the galactic stage entirely, retreating into their own corner of the universe, to develop without interference. In the midst of the panic, analysts turned to old records, searching for clues. They pored over decades of human communications, statements, and council interactions, looking for the reasons behind this sudden withdrawal. Slowly, patterns emerged. Humans had repeatedly raised concerns, some of which had been ignored, dismissed, or even ridiculed. Complaints about unfair treatment, about council decisions made without consultation, about subtle manipulations. They were all there. Over the years, humans had tolerated these slights with patience, but perhaps patience had limits. Perhaps now, silence was their statement. As more council members realized the depth of the humans' dissatisfaction, tension grew. There were accusations, heated arguments, and even bitter debates about responsibility. Who had failed to listen? Who had underestimated the humans? Could this silence lead to catastrophe? Or was it simply a lesson that the galaxy had been blind to human resolve for too long? Outside the council chambers, ordinary citizens across many worlds began to feel the ripple effects. Trade stations were confused by the sudden halt in shipments. Some medical supplies and essential goods could not reach certain systems, and confusion spread in marketplaces. Even species that had never interacted with humans directly felt the shockwaves of their sudden disappearance. Fear, uncertainty, and speculation spread faster than any verified information. As rumors filled the void left by human silence. In this moment, the galaxy began to see humanity in a new light. No longer just an unpredictable ally, humans were something entirely different, independent, determined, and capable of making decisions that could shape the balance of the entire galactic order. The Council had assumed that humans relied on them. That assumption, as the silence continued, proved to be dangerously wrong. Back on Earth, none of this chaos mattered. Life continued, but in a different rhythm. Humans focused on themselves, on their societies, on their projects, and on building systems that could stand without relying on the Council. They were not angry nor vengeful. They were deliberate, practical, and focused on creating a world that worked for them on their terms. To the galaxy, it looked like a mysterious, even frightening act of rebellion. To humans, it was simply a long overdue pause, a moment to step back, to breathe, and to build without interference. The first part of this story closes with the Council realizing something they had not before. Humanity did not need permission, nor did it need constant validation. The silence, once frightening, was a statement of power. And the question that hung over the chambers, unspoken but clear, was simple and terrifying. What would humans do next? The silence from Earth stretched on, and the Galactic Council's anxiety only grew. Every attempt to contact humans failed. Every message, every probe, every request for dialogue returned the same cold statement. Humanity has suspended external communication. Do not approach soul space. No explanation, no discussion, no negotiation. Just absolute refusal. Council leaders held emergency meetings day and night, trying to figure out what this meant. For centuries, humanity had been a dependable, if occasionally stubborn, participant in galactic affairs. They had attended peace talks, signed trade agreements, and even participated in joint exploration missions. But now, without warning, they had chosen complete silence. This was something no one had ever seen before. The Council tried everything they knew. They sent advanced communication arrays, hoping to break through Earth's signal defenses. Every message was carefully crafted to appeal to humans' known values: logic, fairness, and their sense of community. Some messages were diplomatic, offering apologies for past oversights. Others were urgent, warning of potential consequences if Earth remained isolated. Every single attempt failed. Humans simply would not respond. Panic began to spread beyond the council chambers. Trade networks that depended on human technology and resources began to collapse. Systems that relied on Earth-made engines or medical supplies were forced to halt operations. Merchants scrambled to find alternatives, but few could match the reliability or quality of human products. Even planets that had never had direct contact with Earth felt the impact. Supplies dwindled, economies faltered, and uncertainty spread. Like wildfire, the Council's intelligence divisions worked frantically, analyzing every known record of human behavior to find a clue. They combed through decades of archives, past speeches, and reports from ambassadors. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Humans had not acted impulsively before. They had always sent warnings, offered compromises, and made their expectations clear. The repeated silence now was deliberate, and the Council realized it was a statement. Humanity was asserting control in a way that no other species had dared. Council members debated the implications. Some feared humans were preparing for war, imagining massive fleets hidden just beyond detection, ready to strike at any moment. Others imagined economic retaliation, thinking Earth might cut off critical supplies to pressure the Council into submission. A few even worried that humans were leaving the galactic stage entirely, retreating into their own solar system to develop independently without interference. The uncertainty gnawed at every member, because none of them truly understood human thinking. Meanwhile, scout drones sent toward the Sol system began returning disturbing reports. Every probe sent to observe human activity was either disabled or redirected without conflict. Some drones reported seeing massive fleets in orbit, perfectly organized but unmoving. Others described new orbital structures, enormous stations that dwarfed any known installations. There was no aggression, no signs of weapons being deployed, yet the scale of human construction stunned even the most experienced analysts. It was clear that humanity was preparing for something, but no one could say what. Inside the council chambers, tensions ran high. Species that had often ignored human concerns now found themselves scrambling to understand the consequences of their actions. Past insults, dismissals, and broken agreements suddenly seemed dangerous. Leaders accused each other of being blind to human potential. Heated debates filled the halls, with voices raised over past decisions that might have triggered this unprecedented withdrawal. Outside the chambers, ordinary citizens began to feel the impact of human silence. Trade stations ran short of Earth-made supplies. Medical clinics struggled to obtain critical equipment. Farmers and manufacturers found it increasingly difficult to get advanced tools and machinery. The ripple effect of Earth's isolation touched worlds far beyond the Council's direct influence. Fear and speculation filled the air as rumors circulated. Some whispered that humans were angry, others that they were preparing something monumental. Everyone agreed on one thing: the galaxy had never seen a species so quietly yet decisively assert its power as the Council struggled. A few voices advocated caution. "We do not yet understand the human mind," one representative warned. "We cannot assume hostility. Perhaps this is not punishment, not aggression. Perhaps this is a request for respect." But these cautious voices were drowned out by fear. It was difficult to remain calm when faced with an entire species choosing silence over dialogue, action over discussion. In the meantime, Earth's focus was entirely inward. Humans were not angry in the way other species imagined. They were deliberate and methodical. They held gatherings to discuss the future of their civilization, debated strategies for self-sufficiency, and focused on projects that had long been delayed by galactic bureaucracy. Engineers, scientists, and leaders worked together in unprecedented cooperation. The silence that terrified the galaxy was not chaos on Earth. It was organization, patience, and careful planning. Humans also accelerated their technological projects. They built infrastructure, expanded fleets, and improved defenses, but all for self-reliance, not conquest. They created systems that could operate independently of galactic networks, ensuring that Earth would never again be forced to depend on species that disregarded its needs. To the outside world, this appeared as preparation for war or rebellion. To humans, it was simply preparation for independence. Meanwhile, Council members became increasingly desperate. Some suggested sending more aggressive probes. Others debated whether to send emissaries in person, risking conflict just to demand answers. A few even considered sanctions or blockades, thinking the human silence could be broken through pressure. But none of these strategies had been tested against a species capable of acting without reliance on external approval. The Council realized that underestimating humans had been a grave mistake. The story of this isolation began to circulate beyond the Council, reaching scholars, journalists, and citizens across the galaxy. Humans were now seen not just as an ally or a curiosity, but as a mystery. Their silence, patience, and focus on their own growth created a sense of awe and fear. Analysts and historians began re-evaluating every interaction the Council had ever had with Earth, realizing that subtle slights and dismissals might have contributed to this deliberate withdrawal. Even the most experienced diplomats admitted to themselves that they did not understand humans. They had always thought of Earth as a young, developing civilization. They had assumed humans relied on the Council's guidance and approval. Now, they were forced to confront the reality that humans did not need validation. They did not need permission. They did not even need the Council. And the full implications of that realization unsettled every member of the Galaxy. At the same time, humans continued their work quietly and efficiently. They built fleets, expanded orbital stations, and developed new technologies, all without making a sound in the galactic network. They focused on internal growth, collaboration, and preparation. The humans did not boast, they did not threaten, and they did not panic. Their calm, deliberate actions were the opposite of chaos. Yet to the Council, it was terrifying. The first months of Earth's silence passed, and the Council realized that their fears might be underestimated. They had assumed that humans would eventually return to dialogue, perhaps after a short pause. But each day that passed without a response reinforced the truth. Humanity had chosen a new path. They were not simply withdrawing, they were reshaping the way they interacted with the galaxy. Some Council members, observing human fleets and structures at the edge of soul space, began to whisper about possibilities no one had dared imagine before. If humans were capable of such organization and self-sufficiency, what might they achieve in the coming years? What new technology might they develop, and how could that shift the balance of power? The questions were endless, and none had clear answers. The second part of this story closes with the Council facing a new, humbling reality. They had believed humans needed the galaxy, but now it was clear that the galaxy needed humans, or at least, it was entirely dependent on understanding them. Humans had chosen silence, not to punish, not to threaten, but to assert control over their own destiny. And the Council, along with every species watching, could only wait and wonder what the next move would be. The calm, deliberate silence of humanity became the most powerful statement the galaxy had ever received. It was not aggressive. It was not cruel. It was simply unyielding, thoughtful, and independent. And in that silence, Humans had spoken louder than any council debate, fleet deployment, or trade embargo ever could. As the weeks of silence stretched into months, the council realized they needed to understand humans better if they were going to respond effectively. Panic alone would not solve the problem, and increasingly, it was clear that humans were not panicking at all. They had chosen their own path, and the galaxy had no insight into their motives. Council analysts began digging into the archives, going further back than ever before. They reviewed every diplomatic report, every communication, and every council decision involving humans. What they found surprised even the most seasoned observers. Humans had not only been vocal about their needs and expectations, but they had also been patient. For decades, they had tolerated slights, ignored dismissals, and overlooked minor injustices, all while trying to cooperate with a council that often acted as if their input didn't matter in the records. One thing stood out. Humanity had warned the council many times, but those warnings had been dismissed or forgotten. Requests for fair treatment, calls for equal representation, and concerns about biased decisions were repeatedly brushed aside. Humans had not reacted aggressively, even when their concerns were ignored, but now their silence indicated something far more serious. It was not anger. It was intention. Council members began to whisper about the implications. For the first time, they acknowledged that they had underestimated humans for far too long. They had assumed Earth was dependent on them. The humans needed approval, guidance, or protection. Yet here was proof that humanity could act independently, that they could make decisions without consulting anyone. That realization unsettled many members of the council, more than any war or rebellion could have done. In addition to the archives, the council's intelligence teams analyzed the humans' past projects. They discovered a consistent pattern. Whenever the council ignored a request or failed to respect a boundary, humans found ways to achieve their goals without relying on the larger network. They built their own technology, developed self-sufficient systems, and solved problems in ways that were often invisible to outsiders. Over time, this had made Earth more capable than many species realized, and their current silence was simply an extension of that independence. Council meetings became tense. Representatives argued about who had failed the humans and what the consequences might be. Some tried to blame individual species or factions, while others admitted it was the council as a whole that had erred. Accusations flew, and the sense of unease in the chamber grew heavier with every passing day. For the first time, it felt like the council had lost control, not because humans were weak, but because humans were strong in ways no one had anticipated. The more council members studied human behavior, the clearer it became that their silence was deliberate and carefully planned. Unlike other species, humans were not acting out of fear, anger, or confusion. They were acting with purpose. They were building their own systems, preparing for a future where they would not be at the mercy of external powers. And they were making this statement without firing a single weapon or sending a single threat outside the council chambers. The effects of human silence were becoming more visible. Trade routes that relied on Earth-made goods faced delays and shortages. Planets that had depended on human technology or medical supplies had to scramble to find alternatives, often with limited success. Citizens across many worlds began to worry not just about immediate needs, but about the long-term consequences of relying on humans. The silence had forced the galaxy to recognize just how much it depended on Earth. Council leaders tried new approaches. They formed committees to study human behavior, hoping to find patterns or predict future actions. Some suggested sending special emissaries to Earth to negotiate directly, but there was fear that such moves would be seen as intrusive or threatening. Others proposed sending trade incentives, hoping to tempt humans back into communication. Every proposal was debated, but nothing seemed likely to succeed. Humans had already shown they were capable of ignoring the entire council when it suited them. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humans continued their quiet, focused work. They were not rushing, nor were they reacting to the council's panic. Instead, they were expanding infrastructure, improving technology, and strengthening their ability to operate independently. Every project, from new orbital stations to advanced fleets, was part of a long-term plan to ensure that humanity would never again be forced to rely on the Council's approval or resources. Humans also strengthened internal governance, holding discussions about values, priorities, and the kind of future they wanted to build. These discussions were inclusive, thoughtful, and often intense. Leaders and citizens worked together to set goals that would benefit everyone, not just a select few. The silence toward the council allowed humans to focus entirely on themselves, on their growth, and on creating a system that could thrive without external interference. From the perspective of the council, the mystery deepened. Human fleets were visible near Sol, but they did not move aggressively. New stations appeared in orbit, vast in size and carefully constructed, yet there was no hint of hostility. Analysts debated endlessly about what these developments meant. Were humans preparing for war, or were they simply securing their independence? The truth was unclear, and that uncertainty made every council member uneasy. The silence forced the council to reflect on its past mistakes. For too long, they had assumed that humans needed them. They had dismissed warnings, ignored requests, and often underestimated human capabilities. Now, the humans' deliberate withdrawal served as a lesson. Underestimating any species, especially one as resilient and innovative as humanity, could have serious consequences. Some council members began to realize that humans' actions were not punitive. They were not retaliating for past slights. Instead, they were demonstrating what humanity was capable of when it chose to focus on itself. The silence was not a threat, but a statement of independence, strength, and self-determination. The council's fear was not because humans were dangerous in the traditional sense, but because humans had proven they could operate entirely on their own terms. As the months passed, the council became increasingly desperate to understand humans. Scholars and historians pored over every piece of evidence, searching for insight into a species that seemed to defy expectations at every turn. Economists analyzed trade patterns, scientists studied technological advances, and diplomats examined the psychological and cultural factors that might drive such deliberate action. Every analysis pointed to the same conclusion. Humans were patient, deliberate, and capable of planning for the long term in ways few species could match. Even as the council struggled to comprehend human motives, humans themselves were not idle. They developed new technologies, improved existing systems, and prepared for a future in which they would not need to rely on the council or any other species. They built fleets, orbital stations, and communication networks designed to function independently. Every step was taken with care and precision, ensuring that Earth could remain self-sufficient no matter what the galaxy did. The contrast between humans and the council could not have been clearer. While the council panicked, debated, and attempted to force action, humans calmly continued their work, focusing on growth, preparation, and self-reliance. Their silence was not a weakness. It was a demonstration of control, patience, and strategic thinking. Humans had chosen to act in a way that was deliberate, effective, and entirely under their own control. By the end of this period, it was evident that the council had been humbled. Humans had proven that they did not need the council to thrive, and that independence could be achieved through careful planning rather than aggression. The silence, once terrifying, became a powerful lesson for every species in the galaxy. Underestimate humans at your own risk. They were capable of extraordinary organization, innovation, and determination, and they did not require external validation to succeed. The third part of this story closes with the Council, acknowledging a simple but profound truth. Humans were no longer a species to be guided or controlled. They had demonstrated their independence through silence, through focus, and through deliberate action. And while the Council remained uncertain about what humanity would do next, one thing was clear: Earth was now fully capable of shaping its own future without anyone else's input, oversight, or approval. The galaxy had been forced to recognize the consequences of ignoring human warnings. Humans had not reacted with anger or violence. They had simply taken control of their own destiny, quietly, deliberately, and in a way that no one could challenge without understanding the full extent of their capabilities. And in that quiet, methodical preparation, humans had spoken louder than any fleet, any treaty, or any declaration ever could. The silence from Earth continued, and by now, the entire galaxy was beginning to feel the effects. Council members who had once dismissed humans as a minor, young species were now realizing the extent of their impact. Every system, from the most developed trading hubs to the smallest colonies, depended on human technology and resources more than anyone had fully acknowledged. When those supplies suddenly stopped, the consequences were immediate and far-reaching. Trade routes that relied on Earth-made engines or fuel components suddenly faced delays. Cargo that once arrived on time now piled up in ports, while merchants scrambled to find replacements. Some attempted to substitute local technology, but nothing matched human quality or reliability. Ships that had relied on Earth-made navigation systems faced minor malfunctions, creating frustration and even small accidents in busy space lanes. While these problems were not catastrophic, they were enough to make the galaxy notice just how dependent it had been on a single species dot in addition to technological impacts. The social and economic consequences began to ripple outward. Planets that depended on human medical supplies struggled to maintain public health. Clinics and hospitals found it harder to obtain essential equipment and medicines, forcing staff to make difficult choices. Food production on some worlds slowed when humans stopped exporting advanced farming technology. Even leisure industries that relied on human entertainment or educational programs suffered, showing just how deeply intertwined Earth had been with other civilizations. Panic began to spread not just in council chambers, but across entire regions. Ordinary citizens, once confident in the stability of galactic systems, began to worry about their daily lives. Some whispered fears of long-term shortages. Others speculated wildly about why humans had withdrawn. Stories circulated of massive human fleets, new stations, and hidden projects, even though few could confirm the details. By acting in silence, humans had created the most powerful leverage imaginable: uncertainty. Council leaders scrambled to respond, but their options were limited. They sent scouts to observe human activity, but every attempt to approach soul space was blocked or redirected without conflict. The humans were clearly organized and capable of protecting their borders without firing a single weapon. Council representatives debated sending emissaries to demand explanations, but no one could predict how humans would react to intrusion. A direct approach risked escalating tensions, and the memory of past warnings being ignored made caution seem wise. Meanwhile, some council members began to analyze what the human silence actually meant. It was not hostility. It was not chaos. It was control. By refusing to communicate, humans had taken the initiative. They were defining the terms of their existence on their own, without seeking approval or input. For the Council, this was unsettling. For the first time, it seemed that one species could operate completely independently, quietly asserting power without conflict or threats. Economists and analysts across the galaxy began reporting new patterns. Systems that had relied heavily on Earth for supplies were now forced to innovate or adapt. Some planets tried to produce replacement technology, but progress was slow. Humans had not simply withdrawn, they had created a gap that the rest of the galaxy was unprepared to fill. The more the Council observed, the more it became clear the humans had planned carefully for this possibility. Earth could thrive even in complete isolation, and that thought left many Council members uneasy. At the same time, citizens on Earth continued their work without distraction. Humans did not panic, argue, or rush. They organized themselves efficiently, focusing on what mattered most: building infrastructure, improving technology, and ensuring long-term independence. New orbital stations were constructed with care, and fleets were expanded in a way that balanced defense, mobility, and sustainability. Every action was deliberate, yet unseen by outsiders. Humans also strengthened internal governance, holding discussions about priorities, values, and future goals. These meetings were calm but thorough, with voices from all walks of life contributing. Everyone had a say, but decisions were made efficiently. No one was arguing over power or recognition. Everything was directed toward preparation and self-reliance. The silence toward the Council allowed humans to focus fully on themselves, without distraction or interference. Observers from other species could only watch in awe and frustration. Human fleets were visible near Sol, yet they made no aggressive maneuvers. New stations appeared in orbit, vast and well-constructed, yet they did not threaten any ships or worlds. Humans were not preparing for war, at least not in the way the Council imagined. They were preparing for independence, and the scale of that preparation was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The more the Council studied Earth, the more they realized that humans had always been capable of remarkable organization. Even before the silence, humans had built complex systems that could function independently and adapt to unexpected challenges. The withdrawal from diplomacy was simply an extension of that capability, a way to assert control over their own future without confrontation. For the first time, other species had to admit that humans were not just clever, they were strategic, patient, and disciplined in ways no one had anticipated. As the months passed, the galaxy began to notice subtle signs of change. Traders adjusted. Roots scientists explored alternative technologies, and diplomats reconsidered past decisions. No one fully understood humans, but everyone understood that their absence had consequences. The silence had forced the galaxy to take humans seriously, in a way that no treaty, debate, or negotiation ever could. Inside council chambers, leaders struggled with a new realization. Humans had become a power unto themselves. They did not rely on the Council, and they had no reason to. Their technology, fleets, and infrastructure were advanced enough to support complete self-sufficiency. The Council could speculate endlessly about human motives, but until humans chose to communicate again, nothing could be done to influence them. The psychological impact of this truth was profound. Council members who had once treated humans as minor players now recognized that they had underestimated them. For decades, warnings had gone ignored, and now the galaxy was paying the price, not in war or destruction, but in uncertainty and a loss of control. Humans had achieved what no other species had. They had created influence without engagement, power without aggression, and independence without confrontation. As Earth continued its quiet, methodical preparation, the Council began to understand the lesson humans were teaching. It was not about punishment or retaliation. It was about self-determination. Humans were showing that a species could thrive on its own terms, without needing validation, support, or oversight. That realization was both humbling and terrifying. For a council that had grown accustomed to control, meanwhile, humans were focused entirely on practical matters. Engineers, scientists, and planners worked together to improve life on Earth and in orbit. Infrastructure projects were completed efficiently, Fleets were expanded with purpose. Communication networks were strengthened for internal use. Every initiative was designed to ensure that humanity could continue to grow, innovate, and protect itself independently. The galaxy saw only fragments of this work, which only added to the mystery and speculation. The fourth part of this story closes with the galaxy beginning to see humans in a new light. They were no longer just a young, unpredictable species. They were capable, independent, and deliberate in their actions. The silence that had caused panic was revealed to be a display of discipline, focus, and self-reliance. The Council, along with other species, could only watch and wonder what humans would do next, while humans quietly built the foundation of their own future, entirely on their own terms. The lesson was clear. Underestimate humans at your own risk. They could thrive, adapt, and grow without anyone else's help. And in the quiet of their work, they had shown a form of power that was stronger than fleets, treaties, or even threats. It was the power of independence, patience, and determination. While the galaxy panicked, life on Earth moved forward with focus and purpose. Humans did not react to the Council's anxiety or the rumors spreading across other star systems. To them, the silence was not an act of aggression or rebellion. It was simply a way to prioritize their own growth, development, and safety. They had spent years building systems, solving problems, and preparing for a future where they could act independently. And now, freed from the distractions of external politics, they could accelerate their plans. People across Earth, from scientists to engineers to ordinary citizens, were involved in this effort. There was no chaos, no frantic debate, no sense of helplessness. Humans worked together efficiently, solving problems that had been delayed for decades. Projects that had previously been slowed by bureaucracy or interference were now moving forward at a pace that amazed even those who had long worked on them. Communities collaborated, ideas flowed freely, and every contribution mattered. This was a society learning to operate entirely on its own terms, guided by careful planning rather than reactionary decisions. Human leadership organized internal councils to make decisions about infrastructure, technology, and future priorities. These councils were inclusive, with representatives from all walks of life, and every voice was heard. Yet the decision-making was efficient. Humans had developed a way to balance discussion with action, ensuring that every plan was considered carefully but implemented decisively. The Council of Leaders did not need external approval. They answered only to themselves and to the people they represented. Meanwhile, technological advancements accelerated. Humans upgraded orbital stations, expanded their fleets, and developed new propulsion systems. Every step was designed to ensure self-reliance and security, not to threaten others. Yet from a distance, the scale of these projects was breathtaking. Observers from other species reported seeing massive structures in orbit, new fleets forming, and sophisticated technology being deployed with careful coordination. The galaxy could see that humans were working on something extraordinary, even if the full purpose was unclear. Education and research became central to humanity's focus. Scientists studied space, energy, and technology with renewed vigor, taking advantage of the lack of external oversight to innovate freely. Engineers redesigned systems to operate efficiently with local resources. Medical experts developed new treatments and devices that no longer depended on interstellar supply chains. Even cultural projects flourished, with humans creating art, music, and literature that celebrated both their independence and their collective ingenuity. Communication networks were strengthened internally. Humans built systems that allowed instantaneous sharing of knowledge, plans, and updates across the planet and throughout orbital installations. Every department, every research group, and every community was connected, creating a level of coordination rarely seen before in human history. These networks ensured that information could flow freely without relying on outside support or approval, and they allowed humanity to respond quickly to challenges. Small or large dot at the same time, humans paid close attention to sustainability. They understood that independence meant they had to take care of their own resources carefully. Farming, energy production, water management, and material processing were all improved, ensuring that the planet and its orbital habitats could support a growing population without outside assistance. This practical focus demonstrated the discipline and foresight that had always defined human innovation. In parallel with these practical efforts, humans strengthened their social cohesion. Communities worked together, emphasizing collaboration over competition. Citizens were encouraged to take responsibility, contribute their skills, and learn from one another. Leaders focused on long-term goals rather than short-term gains, fostering a culture of patience, resilience, and mutual respect. This focus on unity and purpose helped humanity stay steady, even as the rest of the galaxy speculated wildly about their actions. The Council, watching from afar, struggled to interpret these developments. For months, they had feared that humans were preparing for war, building fleets to attack or defend aggressively. Yet every new report contradicted that expectation. Human actions were disciplined, organized, and efficient, but they were not aggressive. It became increasingly clear that humans were not reacting to the Council, they were preparing for themselves. Independence, not conflict, was the goal. Economists and analysts across the galaxy reported an uncomfortable truth. Humans had achieved a level of self-sufficiency that few species could match. Their infrastructure, technology, and organizational capabilities allowed them to operate without reliance on others. Even the Council, which had assumed humans depended on them, could no longer claim control over Earth. Humans had quietly ensured that no interference could threaten their progress. The realization caused both admiration and fear. Council members debated endlessly about what humans might do next. Some feared humans would expand aggressively once their preparations were complete. Others wondered if humanity would remain isolated permanently, refusing to participate in galactic affairs, unless invited on its own terms. No one could predict the next step, and that uncertainty was both powerful and unsettling. Despite the Council's concern, humans maintained their focus. They continued to expand fleets for exploration and defense, not conquest. Orbital stations were upgraded to support research and manufacturing, ensuring that Earth could function independently. Technologies once dependent on interstellar trade were redesigned to use local materials. Humans were building a future that was resilient, adaptable, and fully under their control. Even the younger generations participated actively in this transformation. Students were trained in advanced sciences and engineering. Communities engaged in large-scale projects, from environmental restoration to fleet construction. Every contribution, no matter how small, became part of a larger collective effort. Humans were learning that independence was not only about technology, but also about social organization, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Throughout this period, humans did not send a single message to the Council or to the galaxy at large. Their silence remained absolute, yet it was not empty. Every action, every construction, every innovation was a statement. Humanity would no longer allow its future to be dictated by external forces. The galaxy saw only fragments of this effort, but even these fragments were enough to inspire awe. Humans had built a system that could thrive entirely on its own, quietly, efficiently, and deliberately. The contrast between humans and the Council could not have been clearer. While the Council panicked, debated, and speculated, humans acted. Decisively, methodically, and patiently. The silence that had caused fear was now understood as strategy. Humans were not reacting to external pressure. They were defining their own terms and ensuring that no external pressure could ever dictate their choices again. As the months turned into a year, the galaxy began to see the scale of human determination. Fleet movements, orbital construction, and technological advancements became increasingly visible. Observers from neighboring systems marveled at how humans could coordinate so much activity with such precision, all while remaining completely independent. No other species had demonstrated this level of organization and foresight without external interference. In the council chambers, leaders began to understand the lesson humans were teaching. It was not about power through weapons or control through diplomacy. It was about strength through self-reliance, independence, and deliberate action. Humans had shown that they could shape their own destiny, quietly and effectively, without needing anyone else to validate or approve their choices. By the end of this period, the Council had come to a reluctant acknowledgement. Humans had achieved something extraordinary. Their independence was not achieved through aggression, threats, or rebellion, but through discipline, collaboration, and foresight. The galaxy, for the first time, had to accept that humans were capable of operating entirely on their own terms, and that their silence had been a powerful tool in achieving this independence. The fifth part of this story closes with humanity, fully focused on its own growth and development. They had proven that independence could be achieved through careful planning, patience, and collaboration. The Council and the rest of the galaxy could speculate endlessly about human motives, but one thing was certain. Humanity had taken control of its future, quietly, deliberately, and without compromise. The lesson was clear. Humans did not need permission, guidance, or validation to thrive. Their silence, patience, and methodical approach had demonstrated a form of power far beyond what the Council had anticipated. They were not only surviving, they were preparing for a future defined entirely by themselves. And in doing so, humans had quietly reshaped the way the galaxy viewed them, not as a young, dependent species, but as a force capable of charting its own destiny. As Earth continued its silent, deliberate preparations, the Council and the rest of the galaxy slowly began to realize the true magnitude of what humans had accomplished. For months, observers had watched orbital stations grow, fleets expand, and internal systems become increasingly self-sufficient. Yet even these glimpses only hinted at the depth of humanity's planning and the scale of their capabilities. Humans had built an entire ecosystem of independence, quietly and methodically, without seeking attention or approval from any other species. Council members debated endlessly about what humans might do next. Some feared they would finally use their fleets to assert dominance over neighboring systems. Others worried that Earth might isolate itself permanently, refusing to participate in interstellar politics or trade. Yet as reports continued to come in, it became evident that humans were not aggressive. They were focused on self-reliance, organization, and long-term planning. Every action was purposeful, but none were intended to intimidate or attack. Inside Earth, people remained calm and efficient. Engineers continued improving ships, technology, and infrastructure. Scientists developed energy systems, communication networks, and life support mechanisms that ensured complete self-sufficiency. Medical experts expanded treatments and created innovations that would allow humans to thrive, even if cut off entirely from the galaxy. This was not chaos. It was careful preparation, deliberate and precise. Humans were showing, through action, what independence truly meant. Education and collaboration flourished. Young humans trained in advanced sciences, engineering, and leadership, preparing themselves to contribute to the growing strength of their species. Communities worked together on large-scale projects, from orbital construction to environmental restoration. Every citizen had a role, every skill was valued, and the sense of purpose was palpable. Unlike any other species, humans had combined patience, cooperation, and innovation into a single, effective strategy for survival and growth. Meanwhile, the galaxy struggled to understand the implications of human silence. For decades, the Council had assumed that humans were dependent on interstellar systems, that they needed approval, guidance, or resources. Now, it was clear that humanity had never truly been dependent. They had quietly developed internal systems, capable of supporting an entire civilization independently, and their silence had been a tool to ensure focus and efficiency. The realization humbled even the most seasoned council members. Observers noted the precision of human coordination. Fleets moved efficiently, construction projects progressed steadily, and research initiatives were aligned with long-term goals. The galaxy could see the results, but the humans themselves remained silent, avoiding any unnecessary communication. It was not arrogance or defiance. It was discipline and clarity of purpose. Humans were building a foundation for the future, and no external influence could derail it. Economic analysts across the galaxy began reporting new realities. Systems that had relied heavily on Earth's technology, medicine, and expertise were forced to innovate quickly. Some adapted, but progress was slow, and the gap between human capabilities and those of other species became more apparent. Humanity's quiet, methodical preparation had created a leverage no one had anticipated, the ability to thrive without dependency while showing the galaxy, without words or threats, what could be accomplished with unity, focus, and foresight. Inside council chambers, debate continued. Leaders who had once dismissed humans as minor players now faced a sobering truth. Humans had become a force independent of the council, capable of determining their own path. Every warning ignored in the past had contributed to this moment. Humans had shown patience, restraint, and intelligence far beyond what many had expected. The Council had underestimated the species for too long, and now they were paying attention too. Late to change the outcome. On Earth, social cohesion remained strong. Humans understood that independence was not just about technology, it was also about community. They strengthened relationships, encouraged collaboration, and promoted shared responsibility. Young and old alike participated in projects, education, and governance, ensuring that the society as a whole would thrive without relying on outside guidance. This unity became the invisible strength behind all human endeavors, reinforcing the capabilities of fleets, stations, and technology. By now, human fleets and infrastructure were fully operational, ready to respond to any challenge without outside assistance. Observation reports noted the efficiency and scale of human coordination. Fleets were not deployed aggressively, but they were capable of defense and rapid mobilization if needed. Orbital stations supported research, construction, and production. On a massive scale, the galaxy could see that humans had prepared not just for survival, but for long-term autonomy. Council members began to reevaluate their understanding of power. For centuries, strength had been measured by fleets, weapons, and alliances. Yet humans had demonstrated a different kind of power, one rooted in preparation, patience, self-reliance, and disciplined action. Without firing a shot or issuing threats, humanity had established itself as a species that could operate independently and influence the galaxy simply by demonstrating capability and determination. Economic and technological dependence had shifted. Planets that once relied on Earth for key resources were learning, sometimes painfully, that humans could thrive without providing aid or participating in trade. This quiet demonstration of autonomy reshaped the way other species perceived power and influence. Humans had not conquered through aggression. They had conquered perception, showing that independence and preparation could be stronger than any fleet or treaty. At the same time, humans themselves remained focused on internal growth. Every day brought new improvements in technology, communication, education, and infrastructure. Plans for exploration and expansion were made with careful foresight, ensuring sustainability and resilience. Citizens contributed to projects large and small, understanding that every effort strengthened their collective independence. The silence that had caused fear across the galaxy was, in fact, a source of strength and focus for humanity. The final months of this period emphasized reflection and consolidation. Humans reviewed progress, assessed resources, and refined strategies for self-reliance. They trained new generations in advanced skills, ensured that every system was sustainable, and maintained internal harmony and coordination. They were prepared, not just to survive, but to thrive, independently of any external influence. Every citizen, every engineer, and every leader contributed to this purpose with dedication and patience. The Council and the galaxy watched, humbled and cautious. The lesson was unmistakable. Humans were no longer a species that could be controlled, ignored, or underestimated. Through careful planning, silent discipline, and cooperative effort, they had demonstrated a form of power that few species could match. The absence of aggression, combined with meticulous preparation, created influence in a way the galaxy had never seen before. The story closes with humanity fully established as an independent force. They had not sought conflict or domination. They had not reacted in anger or fear. Instead, through silence, patience, and deliberate action, humans had taken control of their own destiny. The galaxy now recognized that Earth could operate entirely on its own terms, and that this independence was a testament to the resilience, ingenuity, and unity of humanity. Humans had reshaped the galaxy's perception of power. They had shown that independence, self-reliance, and focused preparation could be more effective than fleets, treaties, or diplomacy. Without words or threats, humans had made their presence undeniable. They were not just a civilization in space. They were a civilization that had learned to thrive on its own terms. And in doing so, they had quietly rewritten the rules of engagement for the entire galaxy.